Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share something really personal with you, a story about my own language learning journey that completely changed how I approach languages now. So picture this, me, 5 years ago, sitting in my room with about 7 different English grammar books spread out on my desk. I had color-coded sticky notes everywhere, I had charts of irregular verbs taped to my wall. I even had a notebook where I would write down every single grammar rule I learned organized by category. I was that person who would spend 3 hours trying to understand the difference between the past perfect and the past perfect continuous. 3 hours! And then I'd spend another 2 hours doing exercises to practice. Whenever I tried to speak English, there was this constant voice in my head, analyzing every single word before it left my mouth. Wait, is this the right tense? Should I use would have or could have here? Is this a countable or uncountable noun? Am I using the right preposition? By the time I figured out the perfect way to say something, the conversation had usually moved on to something completely different. Or worse, I'd just stay silent because I was too afraid of making a mistake. I remember one time in particular, I was in an online language exchange and I spent so long constructing this grammatically perfect sentence in my head that the person thought my internet had cut out. They were like, "Hello, are you still there?" And I was just there, silently conjugating verbs and rearranging word order. But then came the moment that changed everything. I had saved up enough money to take a 2-week trip to London, my first time in an English-speaking country. I was so excited, but also terrified. I thought, this is it. Time to use all that perfect grammar I've been studying. On my 3rd day there, I was at this little cafe, and I overheard these 2 British businessmen having this intense conversation. They were clearly native speakers. They had the accent, the confidence, everything. And guess what? Their grammar wasn't perfect. They were using fragments, mixing up tenses, dropping words, using slang I'd never seen in my textbooks. And yet, they understood each other perfectly. They were communicating effectively, making deals, laughing, connecting, all while breaking the rules I had spent years memorizing. But then came the real moment. Later that evening, I was at this small gathering my hostel had organized, and I met this woman named Sophie. Sophie was from Italy, and her English was, well, technically imperfect. She used the wrong prepositions sometimes, she mixed up her verb tenses, her word order wasn't always correct. But Sophie was the life of the party. Everyone loved talking to her. She told these amazing stories about her travels, made everyone laugh, asked interesting questions, and connected with people from all over the world. Nobody cared about her grammar mistakes. They were just too busy enjoying her company and her stories. And there I was, the grammar expert, barely saying a word because I was too afraid of making a mistake. I'm not gonna lie, I felt like such a fool. All those hours, all those years spent obsessing over rules, and Sophie was running circles around me with her imperfect English. I felt frustrated with myself, with my teachers, with the whole language learning system that had made me believe perfect grammar was the goal. I remember going back to my hostel room that night and actually crying a bit. It wasn't just about language learning. It was about realizing I'd been hiding behind grammar rules because I was afraid. Grammar had become my excuse not to put myself out there, not to be vulnerable, not to connect with people. But mixed with that frustration was this incredible sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted. If native speakers didn't even use perfect grammar all the time, and if Sophie could communicate so beautifully with mistakes, then maybe I could too. So I made a decision right there in that hostel room. For the rest of my trip, I would speak. Just speak. No more mental grammar checks, no more staying silent until I had the perfect sentence. I would embrace the mistakes and focus on the connection. The next day was terrifying and liberating. I struck up conversations with the barista, with people on the tube, with tourists at museums. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, there were awkward moments, but people understood me. We connected, we laughed. Sometimes they helped me find the right word, and it became this collaborative human experience instead of a grammar test. By the end of my 2 weeks in London, I had made friends, collected phone numbers, and created memories, all in my imperfect English. And I realized something profound. I had actually improved more in those 2 weeks of fearless speaking than in the previous 6 months of grammar study. So when I got home, I didn't throw away my grammar books. Grammar is still important and it has its place, but I completely changed my approach. Instead of starting with grammar rules, I started with communication. I watched shows, listened to podcasts, read books I enjoyed, and spoke as much as possible without that critical voice in my head. So if you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're that person with the color-coded grammar notes and the fear of speaking, here's what I want to tell you. First, understand that perfect grammar is not the goal. Connection is. The purpose of language isn't to follow rules perfectly. It's to share ideas, feelings, and experiences with other human beings. Second, native speakers break grammar rules all the time. Listen to natural conversations. Watch unscripted videos. You'll hear fragments, filler words, grammar mistakes everywhere. And yet, communication happens. Third, your mistakes are not as noticeable as you think. That critical voice in your head is much louder than any judgment from others. Most people are just happy you're making the effort to speak their language. Fourth, you learn by doing, not by knowing. You can know all the grammar rules in the world, but if you don't practice actually using the language, that knowledge stays theoretical. And finally, and this is the big one, be kind to yourself. Language learning isn't a test to pass, it's a skill to develop. Like any skill, it involves trial and error, awkward stages, and gradual improvement. Looking back now, I'm actually grateful for my grammar obsession phase. It was part of my journey, and it gave me a strong foundation. But I'm even more grateful for that moment in London when I realized grammar wasn't everything. Today, my English isn't perfect. You've probably noticed some mistakes in this video. But I can have deep conversations, I can make friends in English, I can share my ideas and understand others. And ultimately, isn't that what language is really for? So let me know in the comments, have you ever felt too focused on grammar or too afraid to speak? What helped you overcome it? I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for listening to mine. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week with more language learning insights. Until then, remember, speak bravely.